Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Bobby McFerrin recorded the iconic 1988 hit Don't Worry, Be Happy, and now his daughter is following in his footsteps. Madison McFerrin performs her first full-length album this Sunday at Wolf Trap in Virginia, and she called in for a preview. Hey, Madison McFerrin. Hey, thanks so much for joining us on WTOP in DC.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Now, we are talking because you are coming to the awesome venue Wolf Trap on Sunday, October 29th at 8 p.m. And obviously, they have the big Feline Center, the outdoor place, but you'll be at the Barns because it's getting a little colder now that we're almost in November. Have you ever played that spot before? It's a really cool spot.
I never have, but I've heard really great things about it, so I'm super excited.
Yeah, my wife and I went and saw Tanya Tucker in there. I'm trying to remember who else we saw in the Barns, but yeah, it's a really cool intimate. Do you tend to like the intimate vibes as opposed to like a big outdoor, amphitheater thing?
Yeah, I mean, until I get the fan base that calls for the amphitheater, like I'd love to play at Red Rock someday. But that's coming eventually. I'm speaking into existence.
Gotta build up to that, right?
Right. But I love intimate venues and being able to like have that vibe with people to really feel that connection and that energy, especially now that we're able to do that a little more safely, although, COVID is very rampant right now still to this day. But I do really enjoy just being able to be immersed in that energy.
Absolutely. Well, I want to remind our listeners all your music and the stuff that they'll hear. But let's get the backstory out of the way first, because I'm sure you're tired of talking about it. But we got to say you're the daughter of Bobby McFerrin. Of course, Don't Worry, Be Happy. I'm sure it's asked you every interview. But yeah, I hate the phrase Nepo baby, all that. Of course you're going to pursue what your parents did. Come on, all of us do it, no matter whether you're musicians or whatever. So whatever, that phrase aside, but dote on your dad. He's still with us, right? What is he, like 73 now?
Yeah, he's 72. No, 72. 73. That is correct. I can't think the wrong age. But yeah, no, I mean, he's a wonderful father. That's probably the best compliment I can give him.
when we all discovered Don't Worry, Be Happy and whistled along to it and woo, all that back in 88, it won Song of the Year, Record of the Year. It was a Grammy winning, phenomenon. When did you, at what age were you cognizant of like, oh, my dad's famous. Oh, that song. I know that was my dad. I know that song.
I mean, I can't really say, like, it was just, it came out before I was born. And so right. It was always around. And, when you grow up in something, it takes a while before you recognize that it's a little bit different than what other people are experiencing. But my parents did a great job of just giving me what was a relatively normal, happy, healthy upbringing.
Awesome. And and then when did you actually decide, okay, I'm gonna, maybe pursue this myself?
I mean, I honestly decided I wanted to be a singer when I was 5 and then just did not look back. So that was really the only path I decided to take. It was something that made me happy. And obviously I had a reference point that you could do something that made you happy in life. And I just decided to go after it.
Awesome. Yeah. And do you have any good stories of, so you're 5 years old. Do you have any good, like sitting on the edge of your bed or jotting lyrics, of early song title or something fun that we could, laugh about?
I mean, I took piano lessons from a pretty early age. And I remember my teacher was always very encouraging of me writing songs, and she made a little CD of stuff that I wish I could find. I've lost it. But I remember there was something about like a song about an owl, and I used to like make up songs about my friends. It was just a lot of kindergartner stuff.
Song about an owl. It's my wife and I just saw an owl for the first time, at least for me, in person, down at Skyline Drive in Virginia. Our listeners will know the national park, Shenandoah Park, well, and they're amazing in person. So I'm glad you wrote the original song about them.
I was the first ever.
Maybe it was like what was the Who song? Except yours is who. That's the best I got. Thanks for humoring me with that laugh. All right, and I'm sorry if I missed it. Where did you grow up?
I grew up a little all over the place. I was born in San Francisco, spent my elementary school days in Minneapolis, middle school and high school in Philadelphia, went to college in Boston, lived in Brooklyn for 8 years, and now I'm in LA.
Gotcha. What college did you go to?
Berklee College of Music.
Oh, okay. Well known. Well, the best of the best. All
Mm.
right. And then you said you were in Brooklyn for a while. So where if there's any we're East Coast, you know, so maybe some folks are familiar. Like what were some of the early clubs you remember playing around Brooklyn?
Um, I mean, my absolute favorite club to play in is to this day, Come On Everybody, which is in Bed-Stuy.
Mm,
But like when I first got there and was doing and then just started doing solo stuff, I made the rounds at the places that everybody seems to make the rounds at, like Rockwood or Pianos, a lot of the places in the Lower East Side, where you really have to cut your teeth in order to get into the larger scene of the New York music scene.
awesome. Yeah. And then I guess so you're toiling away, you know, paying your dues, cutting your teeth at all the clubs, like the best of the best always do. And then just remind our listeners who maybe, you know, maybe this interview is maybe they're familiarizing themselves with your work. How do you get you put together that first EP? Was it You and I, or was it Finding Foundations? Which was first?
Finding Foundations was first, volumes
Okay.
1 and 2. To this day, I'm independent. I put all those things out independently.
Gotcha.
Um, Finding Foundations Volume 1, I literally just like uploaded it into what's it called? DistroKid. I did the same with Finding Foundations Volume 2, if I'm not mistaken. And
Was
it
it
really,
DistroKid? Is that the software?
yeah, it's a software where you just upload your music and it gets out to all the DSPs like Spotify and Apple Music and whatnot.
Oh, cool.
Um, but my acapella stuff, the Finding Foundations EPs, those were more or less an accident. It wasn't something I was intending to do, but I had started doing these solo shows and I was using just a loop pedal, and I used to have a synthesizer with me as well. But I started doing some gigs that would involve shorter sets, and with looping, songs take longer because you're making the whole song from scratch. And so a 15-minute set is really just an opportunity to do like 3 songs. So I'd stopped taking my synthesizer with me and was like, well, people like these acapella songs that I do. So for the sake of just filling out the right amount of time and not wanting to just do one song with a synthesizer, I'll just do these acapella songs. And people really took to them. So I was like, oh, let me just put them out and see what happens. And that ended up getting a bit more buzz than I was anticipating, because I ultimately was trying to put out music with instrumentation, but I just wanted to get my name out there.
Mhm.
And then people really liked the acapella stuff. So I kept going with it. And then that turned into 2 EPs. Maybe that'll even be more EPs, which then I moved on to, working with some beats that my brother had and doing that with You and I. And then just came out with my debut album, I Hope You Can Forgive Me, this past May.
Absolutely. And real quick, I want to hit you and I before we will get to I Hope You Can Forgive Me in a second. But how did you see yourself, you think, evolving, growing between those first EPs and then by the time you got to You and I, other than just brothers' involvement, of course.
Um, well, funny enough, I had actually intended on starting with music with instrumentation. That's also where the like how the acapella stuff ended up being a little accidental, because it really was just to kind of get my name out there. Um, but it was interesting having new music in that way and not just doing the acapella loops. It was definitely a shift in terms of my performance. I think that was probably the biggest thing, is I had to adjust how I performed, because when it was the acapella stuff, it was just me and the loop pedal, and I would stay in one place because of the fact that it was like I couldn't move away from the loop pedal. And so then doing the You and I project was like, oh, I need to have more movement. I need to be doing a bit more stage work in my performance. And so I think that was probably the biggest adjustment for me as a performer.
And your brother's name's Taylor, right? So
Correct.
what Taylor McFerrin, what was it like? Did you guys like, grow up playing together, or is that like a reunion of sorts where were you always collaborating all this time?
Um, so Taylor is 10 and a half years older than me. So he was more so, as I was growing up, really showing me music and like putting me onto music. And he would have me jump on little beats that he had, as mostly like, oh, my little sister is going to do like a funny little something, just like making stuff up. Um, and really the only song on You and I where he and I like were in the studio at the same time collaborating was Fallen. The other songs were beats that he already had that I did stuff on top of.
Gotcha, gotcha. And you also had that song, wasn't Try on there?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And tell us about the video. Wasn't it like you took on you know, some feedback, some pushback against the Star Spangled Banner performance? Remind us, and listeners that aren't familiar with that whole, what was that even about?
So before I'd even started doing solo music, I got asked to, wow, I just realized I haven't told this story in so long. I used to tell it all the
Take your time. Take your time.
time. um, Before I started doing solo music, I got asked to perform the national anthem when Hillary Clinton won the Democratic nomination. And I got asked just like 48 hours before it happened. And so, you know, I was also a nanny at the time in New York. And so I was like finding time to rehearse in between, like while the kids napping and whatnot. And because I had work, I couldn't go to sound check. And when I got there, people had already been waiting for a number of hours. And then Hillary didn't come out for a few hours after that. So there was like the room was like really ripe with anticipation of just this iconic moment. So they brought me out on stage, but they didn't introduce me. So when I started singing the national anthem, the audience started singing the national anthem with me.
Oh,
And that was a moment where I was like, okay, I'm not about to tell the audience to stop singing the national anthem,
right. Because you
even though
can't.
it's like not the version that I had been strenuously rehearsing for
Oh
48
no, all the
hours.
prep went out the window because they're
Right. And
just
so it's
doing
like,
their own
okay.
arrangement.
And it was also, you know, a really beautiful moment. Like we were all very excited for what we thought was going to be the first woman president of the United States. And just being excited in that moment. And so I was like encouraging people to sing along because it was like, okay, I'm not going to tell you to stop. Um, but then what happened was I had the only microphone and it was live. And on television, you couldn't hear the audience at all. So I just sounded like crap because again, I was just like singing essentially what's happy birthday with a crowd of people, just
Right,
being
right.
like the individual person. And the Star Spangled Banner is it's a very difficult song to sing.
Oh yeah.
So I got trolled on the internet and like even Snoop Dogg made fun of me.
Oh
And I
no, come
yeah, and
on,
it
Snoop.
was like it was awful and I felt awful. But ultimately it ended up being one of the best things that's ever happened to me because like I mentioned, I wasn't doing solo music at that point, and it really took that moment for me to be like, you know what? I've been going after this dream my whole life. These people are not going to get me down. And so that was my catalyst to really start doing solo music. And then I think that subconsciously doing all a cappella music where it's like just my voice was a little bit of like an FU of like, oh, you think I can't sing? Here's this music that's just my voice. Now tell
Right,
me something differently.
exactly. Exactly. Well, sorry to bring up you know, a slight bad memory on the way to the good, you know, the
Oh
silver
no,
lining in the end.
no, it's
But
actually
yeah,
like
it's
I've totally like reclaimed it, and it doesn't make me feel bad at all because I know that it was just a moment in my history and in my life. And like I said, it was like if it were not for that moment, who's to say that I would have started my solo career when I started it? And that is why I'm here talking to you right now.
I love that. It's the, what is it? The, you know, the lemonade out of lemons thing. Like it's the,
Exactly.
you would not have thought, you wouldn't have thought to, you said yourself, it was almost like okay, I'm going to show you an F you to the critics and I'm going to do some soulapella as Questlove dubbed it, right? Your
Correct.
soulapella. So in the end, it got you, you know, it helped you leveled up because of it.
Exactly.
Um, Awesome, awesome. Well, by the way, what has it been like working with Questlove? I know you've worked with him a bunch.
Um, excuse me. So he and we've just been like friends for over a decade. And so he's asked me to do some things with like De La Soul, which has been really awesome. And,
Hmm.
you know, he's a really amazing person. And I'm just grateful to have someone like him in my corner.
Absolutely, absolutely. And by the way, before we sidetrack too much into, you know, who you collaborated with and stuff, we mentioned Try was on the You and I, but I also want to mention your song Guilty, which dealt with another, you know, another political issue with the murder of George Floyd. Tell me about, were you just like so incensed and furious you just sat down and penned it like the next day, or yeah, how did it come about?
That was a really interesting moment. I had been in the studio working on my song Hindsight, And I knew that the conviction or the verdict was coming out that day. And so I kept scrolling through Twitter or like refreshing Twitter to see when it was happening. And I got picked up from the studio to go back home. And I was on a phone meeting in the car. I wasn't driving. My partner at the time was driving. And I'm like refreshing Twitter. And while we're in the car, it comes out that he's guilty. And I was like, oh my God, he's guilty. And uh, we
Derek,
get
what's his
home,
name? Chauvin.
Derek Chauvin. And all of a sudden, like literally as soon as the guilty verdict came out, that loop came in my head. And as soon as we stopped the car, I like ran to go to get to our apartment. I ran out. I was like, I got to get this out right now. I sat down, did the loop, and I think within 15 minutes I'd put it out, and then it just went viral.
Wow. So you wrote it in your head in the car right when you heard the thing come across the radio or social media or whatever. You wrote
Yeah.
it in real time. Wow.
Yeah, immediately.
And that's how some of the best stuff happens. Well, thank you for, for your real time reaction. That will now be, frozen in time forever in the song. We'll always
I
be able to
know.
listen.
I've said that I'm gonna retire it when Trump is found guilty.
Well, you'll have a double meaning of the song title at that point, or you can do
Exactly.
a remix or something.
One can hope.
Well, all right. Well, then we have to talk about what you sort of you mentioned it earlier, but let's talk about your most recent, your album. I hope you can forgive me. What's in the title? First of all, why was that the title?
Well, a lot of it was deeply personal and trying to just go through what it means to be an adult and learn and grow and not hold on to things in your past or be tied down by ways in which you may have gone through life that may no longer serve you. And so I was forgiving myself essentially so that I could let go of mistakes that I had made or things that could be really easy to kind of attach to in a negative way. It's like, I wish I hadn't done this like that, or like, why wasn't I doing more of this when I was a kid? Or, just these things that you can get so caught into these spirals that don't serve you and don't help you move forward. Excuse me. So I really wanted to release that energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really like I'm forgiving myself for things that may no longer serve me, but maybe they served me when I was younger. Maybe that's how I survived. That's how I was able to get through traumatic experiences. So I understand that a lot of us go through similar feelings. And even though I write from an incredibly personal place, I understand that people have these feelings. I'm not the first person to be feeling any feeling. Humans have been around for 300,000 years or so, maybe even more, depending on who you talk to. So I just wanted to acknowledge my own self work in that process with the understanding that a lot of us are going through that too. And I think forgiveness is a really important thing to have for other people and especially for ourselves. I think it's a really hard thing. Forgiveness is a very hard thing, but ultimately it helps us grow and be better people at the end of the day.
Wow, so that's cool. And if you just read it on a page, the album title, I Hope You Can Forgive Me, it sounds almost like you're asking for others' forgiveness, but you're saying it's just as much and as important something we can all learn from. It's just as much about forgiving ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's almost, you're saying that almost in the mirror to yourself. I hope you can
Yeah.
forgive. That's
Mm-hmm.
great. Well, one more really quick. You've been really generous with your time, but I want to ask, unpack, the album, at least one specific song. I know, Please Don't Leave Me Now. Wasn't it about, almost dying in a car accident?
Yeah. In November 2021, my partner and I, we were driving from Brooklyn, where we were living at the time, to Chicago, where his family's from. And it's a drive we've done several times. And when we were about 90 minutes away, I merged from the right lane into the left lane, hit a patch of black ice, spun out 360 on the highway, and we flipped upside down into a ditch.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and it was like the most terrifying experience I've ever had for obvious reasons. but we walked away without a scratch, without a single scratch. Um, I think he got like a bruise on his arm because we rolled on the passenger side,
Hmm.
but it was gone within 48 hours. So like really like no physical injuries, which was really incredible. And I obviously walked away feeling like I had a new lease on life. That's the closest experience to death I've ever had. And for everybody listening, wear your seatbelts, please. It was the difference between us just like hanging upside down and maybe being dead. But it was the first song that I wrote after the accident happened. It was produced by Andrew Lappin, one of two other producers that I worked with. Because another thing I should mention about the album, I produced 70% of it myself,
Mm-hmm.
which women only make up 2.8% of producers in the music industry, which is a pretty abysmal
Which is crazy.
statistic. But this is one of the 3 songs out of 10 that was not produced by me. But I had already had that beat and I hadn't written anything to it yet. And so that I think I wrote the song maybe like 3 or 4 days after the accident happened, just because I was feeling so much emotion about it and needed to release that. I mean, songwriting for me is an incredibly cathartic experience and is one of the ways in which I feel I can really release my emotions the best and be honest and true about how I'm feeling. Things will come out in songs that are like so deep in my brain and in my soul that it's just like it seems like something about combining the music and the lyrics allows me to express myself to the fullest. And I really felt like that was a song where I was able to release a lot of the trauma that came along with that, as well as, and this is a fun little factoid for all of your listeners out there. I was told right after this accident happened, one of my best friends, she's in mental health. She was like, you guys need to download and start playing Tetris immediately. So for those
Whoa.
of you who don't know, if you go through like a terrible car accident or are struggling with some PTSD about stuff, Tetris simulates EMDR therapy, which is a type of therapy that allows you to kind of like compartmentalize and process trauma without it like re-entering your body. And so I immediately started playing Tetris. And there's a lot of evidence about this. This is not just like some
Yeah.
hocus pocus. And so I immediately started playing Tetris, got pretty good at it. And so now I feel pretty like I started driving again right away, and like I feel very confident. And if there are ever times when I've been driving and like I have a bit of a tense moment, when I get home, I'll play some Tetris and just kind of decompress.
Wow. Yeah, I guess it makes sense. Like, I guess you're, in the game, you're making the blocks fit together and stuff like that and eliminate lines. And I guess that's kind of, you're sort of defragging your own brain and, your trauma, helping it all fit together. That's kind of an interesting parallel. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, hey, you're talking, I had the Tetris on the original Nintendo and on the Game Boy. My wife plays it on her iPhone all the time. And there was a movie this year. So there's your Tetris plug.
There you go.
That's
Sponsor
fantastic.
me, Tetris.
Dun, 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 dun. There you go. Work that into a song. No, but in all seriousness, it sounds like a couple of your best songs that you're most proud of, were from car rides. The Derek Chauvin Guilty Verdict came across while in the car, and you pulled over, you wrote it, and then this one came out of a car accident. Please don't leave me now. That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to say funny because I'm sure you're not hanging upside down on a seatbelt writing it there like the last one. You get my
I
drift.
pick up what you're putting down.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so and then I don't know. I've thrown out a couple of your song titles and gotten some deep dives on them. But before we run, is there any one that I didn't mention that you're personally proud of that maybe isn't underrated or gets overlooked, or that you look back on and you're like, hey, some of my best work?
Well, I'm really proud of all of the music. I think that for a debut album and for having, I couldn't produce prior to the pandemic outside of, the acapella stuff that I was producing. And so to produce 70% of my debut album, I'm incredibly proud of that. I think one of the songs that I'm most proud of, funny enough, is one of the acapella songs, God Herself. that was a song that, like, you know, as an artist, it feels really great when every single idea that you have in your head comes out. And that was one of those songs. And that was actually the last song that I wrote on the album. And I felt like that one had a big punctuation. But even separate from the album, I actually just wrote a Christmas song that I'm super excited about. And you will definitely be getting it in your inbox. And so hopefully the masses will hear it, because I think it's pretty funky.
Whoa, can you tease any more about what's is it like a new Christmas song or like an update on a famous Christmas carol or something?
No, it is a brand new Christmas song, and it's dancey and it's fun. And I think that a lot of people are going to like it.
Awesome. We'll look out for that. We'll plug that for sure. It's Christmas.
Oh, I'll be performing it. I'll be performing it at the show. So if you
it'll
want,
be at Wolf Trap.
yeah, it'll be at
Awesome.
Wolf Trap. So if you want to
I
hear,
guess the holidays are right around the corner, so
exactly,
it'll be a sneak preview from Halloween to Christmas. It'll be a
exactly.
nightmare before Christmas. Awesome. But we can say, in addition to that, we can say, as we promote this Wolf Trap show, that you'll be playing songs from your, I hope you can forgive me, we can call that your debut, full-length album, because the others were EPs, right?
Correct.
Okay, cool. Well, that's exciting stuff. That's exciting stuff. Awesome. Well, and then I guess in closing, do you ever, and forgive me if you get this too much, but do you ever play any of your dad's stuff at the show too, or is it all Madison McFerrin all the way?
No, I have a song with him on the record, but I don't see any reason to play his music. It's not mine.
That's its own thing. You have your own. Well, what's your collab on yours then?
It's a song called Run.
Run, and what's it about?
It's a pretty long, extensive thing, but I do tell the story at the show, so come to the show.
You got to come to the show to see it. Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It sounds like it's going to be a great show at Wolf Trap, everybody. Again, it's Madison McFerrin. It will be at Wolf Trap on Sunday, October 29th at 8 p.m. and it'll be in the Barns. So no matter what the weather is, it'll be good. And yeah, I mean, you've seen, trust me, folks, you'll probably recognize the songs from, if you watch Broad City on Comedy Central, Random Acts of Flyness on HBO, you've heard the songs in different places. So now come out and support the artist behind it at the show. It's going to be great.
It's going to be awesome.
Hey, thank you so much for doing this. My grandparents had both passed away, 18 years ago now. They used to have one of those talking fish on the wall that sang your dad.
Big Mouth Billy Bass.
Big Mouth Billy Bass. I'm sure the royalties are still rolling into your dad.
Totally.
Yeah, they used to have that. What was the other one? Oh, Take Me to the River by the Talking Heads. So, depending when you hit the button. But anyway, they'd be tickled that we're talking. So thank you so much for doing this, Madison. This can be a great show. Everyone head out to Wolf Trap.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.